Okay, this is Course 3 Math, Chapter 9, Lesson 2, Parallel and Perpendicular Lines, and I am Mrs. McCowan. Today, Block 4 is recording this. Thank you, Block 4. We are learning, classifying, and determining the measure of angles, including angles created when parallel lines are cut by transversals. So let's look at our Explore It. In Activity 1, they want us to use a straight edge to draw a non-vertical transversal through the given lines. Any straight edge would be a piece of paper, a textbook, a calculator, a notebook. It doesn't have to be a ruler. A straight edge is anything with a straight line. Okay, so let's draw on here and copy what Mrs. McCowan's drawing. A line. This is called a transversal. So now that we have this line, it's making angles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and angles 8. Okay, now we're going to guesstimate. An angle 2 looks like it's about 150 degrees. So if that's 150 degrees, what do you think angle 1 is?
30.
Excellent. Thank you, Erica. It's 30 degrees. So whatever angle 2 is, that's the same measure as angle 6 and angle 7 and angle 3. Excellent. So we can write those down. Angle 3 must be 150. Angle 6 must be 150. And angle 7 must be 150. And then what would the rest of them be?
30.
30. Excellent job. Are there any relationships that you notice from this transversal? The line that's cutting the two parallel lines is called a transversal. It's making relationships between all these angles. Rose, can you tell us or describe something you noticed about? Excellent. So all obtuse angles are the same, are equal. All acute angles are equal. What about adjacent angles? If the angles are adjacent, they are if 2 is across, or I'm sorry, adjacent angles means that they would be opposite. So they would be adjacent angles equal 180 degrees together. And then vertical angles, and we learned about that in our last lesson, vertical angles are across from each other. So vertical angles are equal. So 2 and 3 are vertical angles, so they are congruent, they are equal. 1 and 4 are congruent angles, or vertical, so they're equal. 5 and 8 are equal, and 6 and 7. Okay, let's take a look at these answers. For numbers 1, 4, 5, and 7, you should have had 45 degrees. For numbers 2, 3, and 6, you should have had 135 degrees. So if we're to draw conclusions, if one of the angles formed when the transversal intersected by two parallel lines measures 38, how many other angles would you expect to be 38 degrees? How many other? Not counting the first one. 3. That's correct. So that would be 3 other angles. And if a transversal intersects two parallel lines and you know that one measures 72, how would you find the other angle beside it? Perfect. Thank you, Michael Mohammed. That'd be 180 minus 72 to find your answer. If you want, you can put the exact answer. What is the exact answer, Michael? 108, that's correct. Okay, activity 2. We have perpendicular lines now, and they intersect, which makes each one of these angles 90 degrees. Angles formed by perpendicular lines also have unique relationships. So use your protractor, which we don't have. Just use an invisible straight edge to tell whether the lines at the right are perpendicular and explain your reasoning. So what I want you to do is look at all of the angles, and if we know that when they intersect, they are 90 degrees, what does that mean about all of them? They're all equal, so they are all 90 degrees. Thank you, Kenny. Okay, try this. Angle 1. What was the measure of angle 1, Greg? Greg? 50 degrees. That is correct. Thank you, Greg. Measure of angle 2. What was the measure of angle 2, Muhammad? 90 degrees. That is correct. Measure of angle 3. What was that, Camille? 40 degrees. That is correct. Vertical angles are congruent. Yuki, what's the measure of angle 4? 50, that is correct. And Kenny, what's the measure of angle 5? 90 degrees, that is correct. Now, can you describe a method you could use to draw a line perpendicular to a given P? So if I have a point on a line named P, so P is on a line, and I have to make something perpendicular. So where am I going to draw my line? Am I going to draw it to the side again? Like this? No, those are parallel. How would I draw a perpendicular line? Straight down. Perfect. And they would intersect, and the angles would be, come on iPad, 90 degrees. Perfect. Okay, number 16, describe a method you could use to draw a line parallel to the given P. So if I have P here on this line, how would I draw a parallel line? I could draw it on top of it, under it, but it cannot touch. So that's very key, cannot touch. Vocabulary word we have on our Learn It is parallel lines. Well, we know those are lines that do not intersect or touch. Intersect would be the appropriate math term. So lines that do not intersect. So what are perpendicular lines? Lines that intersect at 90 degrees. Perfect. And then the transversal, this may be a new word that you learned today. A transversal is a line that intersects two or more lines. And usually those lines are parallel. Your book definition says that they don't have to be, but usually when we're using them, they will be parallel. Example 1. So we're going to measure the angles formed by the transversal and the parallel lines, which angles seem to be congruent. So if angle 1, 3, 5, and 7 all measure 150, angle 2, 4, 6, and 8 all measure
30 degrees.
30 degrees. That is correct. So then we need to say which ones are congruent. So measure of angle 1 is congruent to the measure of angle 3 is congruent to the measure of angle 5 is congruent to the measure of angle 7. Measure of angle 2 is congruent to the measure of angle 4 is congruent to the measure of angle 6 is congruent to the measure of angle 8. Okay, let's check our answer. The measure of angle 1 is congruent to the measure of angle 4. That is correct. The measure of angle 5. That is correct. And the measure of angle 8. That is correct. So then what is left?
2,
2,
3, 6, and 7.
3,
6 and 7.
6, and 7. That is correct. So in this figure, line L is parallel to line M. Find the measure of each angle. Justify your answer. While looking at our lines, angle 4
124 degrees.
is
124 degrees.
124 degrees. And how did we find that?
It's the same as
It's the same as
the one at the top.
this. It's in the same spot. We call that corresponding. When you take geometry, one of the proofs and theorems that you're going to use is corresponding angles are congruent. So you're just learning that for the first time. Corresponding angles are congruent. So we have 124. Check. Okay, so number 2, angle 2
56 degrees.
is how many degrees?
56.
56 degrees. And we found that from subtracting 124 from 180. So we know that angle 2 is supplementary. And angle 6 plus something equals 180 plus 124. So what is angle 6? $56. That is correct. So let's check out our answers for 2A. The measure of angle 5 is
36 degrees.
36 degrees. That is correct. Letter 2B, the measure of angle 7. Yes, Miss Erica?
144 degrees.
144 degrees. That is correct. And then 2C, the measure of angle 8 is, Debbie?
36.
36 degrees. That is correct. And then corresponding angles are congruent makes angle 6. Mohammed? 144 degrees. That is correct. Okay, if you have any questions, you need extra help, you can go back and watch this video again, ask Mrs. McCown a question, or come in the morning for extra tutoring. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Block 4.
Kenneth Bradshaw.